Where is the video I wanted to see? Oh yeah, this is Dario Amodei. This is 2 days ago. The AI tsunami is here, and society isn't ready. Finally, some Kino. Nice establishing shots. Why is there establishing shots? I don't care.
Didn't OpenAI believe in scaling laws because they went down the same path themselves too, right?
Well, yeah, we, did my undergrad in physics.
You know, it's weird when you get Indian people who don't look Indian but have weird Indian accents. What's happening? You know what I mean?
About to happen. It's as if this tsunami is coming at us, and it's so close we can see it on the horizon, and yet people are coming up with these explanations for, oh, it's not actually a tsunami, it's just a trick of the light. Like, there hasn't been a public awareness of the risk.
What is India's role in all this?
Many other companies come here as themselves a consumer company, and they see India as a market, right, a place to obtain consumers. We actually see things a little bit differently.
Here we go. Are you guys ready?
What did you do before founding Anthropic?
Yeah, so I was actually originally a biologist. I did my undergrad in physics, my PhD in biophysics, and I wanted to understand biological systems so that I could cure disease. I like
the people he has the woke mind virus. We need to bring him to heal. He has the woke mind virus. He's just like a nerdy guy.
About studying biology was incredible complexity. That for example, if you look at the protein mass spec work that I did, right, trying to find protein biomarkers, it's just really incredible how much complexity there is, right? You have a given protein, it's like the RNA gets spliced in a whole bunch of different ways depending on where it is in the cell. Then it gets post-translationally modified, phosphorylated, complex with a whole bunch of other proteins. And I was starting to despair that it was too complicated for humans to understand. And then as I was doing this work on biology, I noticed a lot of the early work around AlexNet, which is one of the first neural nets, like almost 15 years ago now. And I said, wow, AI is actually starting to work. It has some things in common with how the human brain works, but has the potential to be larger and scale better and learn tasks like biology. Maybe this is ultimately going to be the solution to solving our problems of biology. So I went to work with Andrew Ng at Baidu. Then I was at Google for a year. Then I joined OpenAI a few months after it started and was basically led all of research there for several years. But then eventually myself and a few other of the employees just kind of had our own vision for how we wanted to make AI and what we wanted the company to stand for. And so we went off and founded Anthropic.
How was it? Was it like a fork in how OpenAI was thinking into what Anthropic eventually did?
Yeah, I would say my conviction and the conviction of my co-founders when we founded Anthropic were two of them. And I think one, we were starting to convince OpenAI of. The other, I was not.
Sam Altman's upcoming conviction.
The conviction in the scaling laws and the idea that
will AI lobotomize the woke mind virus?
There are a few modifications like RL, but not really very much. It's pretty close to pure scaling. You find that when you do that, you find
I like this guy.
And,
I think very highly of this person.
When we just first saw the first glimmers of the scaling laws, and of course there were a lot of folks inside.
I don't like how he gets he gets what's he called? Saliva in the corner of his mouth. I think that's a little disturbing, and it really disturbs me. But otherwise, I really actually think highly of him. I think he's pretty intelligent. Him and Jensen Huang, I think, are like the two people that whenever I listen to them, I'm like, this actually sounds like a smart person who's interesting to listen to. Everyone else, like Sam Altman, it's like, there's no benefit of listening to this person at all. Same thing with, who's that person who is Andrew or Peter Thiel or Alex Karp. They're just like, these people have no value in terms of listening to them. I like Lucky Palmer. I think he should get punished and he should have his companies taken from him, and I think he will have a good life after because he's smart, but right now he's just super obnoxious. But I wouldn't want to listen to him about anything.
Really made the case for leadership, like this is important, this is going to be a big deal. And I think they were kind of starting to believe us and ultimately went in that direction. And there was a second conviction I had, which is, look, if these models are going to be kind of general cognitive agents, like general cognitive tools that match the capability of like the human brain, we better get this right. The economic implications are going to be enormous. The geopolitical implications are going to be enormous. The safety implications are going to be enormous. It's going to transform.
I'm eating some Doritos.
And so we need to do it in the right way. And
the cool thing about AI too, and I'll tell you this, is you can do whatever you want because we're going to have nanobots that go into our brains, and so you can eat Doritos and smoke weed all day, and then you just have a nanobot make you smart again and healthy again. So now we can have Doritos and drink Mountain Dew and smoke weed whenever we want, and there's never going to be any downsides. So we can live forever and also smoke weed forever. So I'm really excited about the future.
Kind of language verbiage about doing it in the right way.
Paradise.
I was for a variety of reasons just not
Heaven on earth.
That, institution that I was at, that there was a real and serious conviction to
Hell
do
yeah.
it in the right way. And so, my view is always, don't argue with someone else's vision. Don't try to get someone to do things the way you want
thank you for the
if you have a
gifted
strong
sub,
vision and share that vision with a few other people. You just go off and do your own thing, and then you're responsible for your own mistakes. You don't have to answer for anyone else's. And maybe your vision works out, maybe it doesn't, but at least it's.
Yo.
Godzilla Grow Hyper just
I didn't even know you're gifting subs.
Subscriptions on Kick.
Thank you very much, Godzilla Graper. Very, very nice. I apprient it.
Didn't OpenAI believe in scaling laws because they went down the same path themselves too, right?
Well, yeah, we succeeded.
Can you explain what scaling laws are in very simple terms?
It's like if you want a chemical reaction to produce oxygen or start a fire or something like that, you need different ingredients. And if you don't have enough of one ingredient, the reaction stops. But if you put ingredients together in proportion, you get your explosion or your fire or whatever. And for AI, those ingredients are data, compute, the size of the AI model. And so the scaling laws just tell you that like, if you put in the ingredients to the chemical reaction, the ingredients of data and model size, that what you get out is intelligence. Intelligence is the product of the chemical reaction.
And what is intelligence?
Intelligence as measured by the ability to translate language, or the ability to write code, or the ability to answer questions.
Armygirl07 just gifted 100 kicks on kick.
Yo, goated. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Skull emoji and full send. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Correctly about a story. Basically, any
We
cognitive task
are
any-
doing
any-
a
any,
donation
task that exists
train
in
where
text or
everyone
images,
donates
any
and gives
task that you
money.
can do on a computer.
And it's a train. It's a
How's
hype
the intelligence
train.
of today, as you are describing it, different from what a computer could do like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I would say.
And it's really
well,
exciting,
for example, 5 years
actually.
ago, a computer, you could not ask a computer a question and have it write a one-page essay on that question. You could not ask a computer to
this shit too
implement a feature in
sweet.
code and have it implement that feature in code. None of those things were possible.
This
You could not
shit
generate an
too
image. You
sweet.
could not generate a video. You could not analyze a video. I could get one of those, videos of like, a monkey juggling or something, and say, what's going on in this video? How many times did the ball change hands? And right now, you could get Claude or another AI model to give you an answer on that. And 5 years ago, none of those things were possible.
I'm trying to figure out, has the definition of intelligence changed per se?
Well, what I would say is 5 years ago, you could Google, and there might be a website that would tell you
Yes,
a little
thank
bit
you very
about
much.
this, right? But you're just looking up some text that exists on the web, right? Maybe it's not about how to get a monkey to juggle. Maybe
Armygirl07 just gifted 100 kicks on kick.
Yo, thank you very much, Armygirl07. Full send going on right now.
maybe it's
I
about
don't know
how to
what
get
that
a
means,
seal.
but-
It's not quite exactly the same thing, because maybe exactly the same thing doesn't exist. But as we see when people use these models, you can ask them. You can
It's
actually
going
get an intelligent
crazy
response. You can ask
right
specific
now. The
questions
chat's
and have a
going
model write,
crazy
one
right
page.
now. Wow.
You can give it a hypothetical.
Wow.
What
If
had,
I was not in
monkey throw the
chat,
clubs
I would
instead of
want to be in
balls, or,
chat
what
right
if I
now
did
saying,
this thing? And
wow.
that information doesn't exist anywhere. Whereas the model is able to kind of think for itself and come up with an answer on its own. So it's something.
The chat's reaching a
it's something totally new. It's
singularity
not just
level.
matching some of the text that exists on the internet.
Dono train. Yo,
Groip just gifted 500 kicks on kick.
damn, rage
Sign up for
quit.
the beta playtest.
Beta playtest. I'm excited too. Yeah, I think what we're going to do with the game, because I keep running into problems with the first person shooter, I think I'm just going to work on the top down shooter and just make that go. Because that's like so goated already. And it's already there, and the pathfinding works. I think that's the key, is to essentially make that game working and like loaded and set up properly.
So, this is more like a conversation, so feel free to talk about what you want to talk about.
But maybe I'll take a week off and just
work.
work on that. I don't know.
You look very animated when you speak. Did you ever teach?
I was originally
Gives me
academic,
Gungeons
and, I
vibes.
thought
It's
that I
an
might
elite
become a
level
professor.
game.
I
Let's
got my
look it
PhD.
up.
I went all the way to being a postdoc at Stanford Medical School, and I was aiming to become a professor. So if I had become a professor, I would have done that.
And the nice thing is I can
as I
work
mentioned,
on
I got interested in
the
AI,
top
and
down
working in AI
shooter.
required a lot of computational resources.
And AI will get better. Maybe it'll be a better AI, and then it'll be able to do the pathfinding better by the time I get back to it.
Sometimes I think I'm still like a professor at heart.
At this point, Dario, if AI is the most relevant thing in the world, if the world is realigning in a way and AI is determining who gets what and who doesn't get what, I'm talking about industries, you today are probably the most relevant person in the world if Anthropic, in this last cycle, in this minute, is sitting on top of this pie. For somebody who was going on the path of being a teacher to have arrived to where you are
What
today,
about clavicular? I think they're forgetting clavicular and Sneeko, perhaps. Yeah, what about Sneeko? I think Sneeko might be a little more relevant. This nerd.
are you best equipped for where you are
This guy
today?
isn't even Muslim.
First, I would
Dude.
say a couple of things. I think there's a lot of folks who are right, relevant in different ways, right? Even within industry, there's the different layers of the stack.
No, bro knows to respect Sneeko and clavicular.
Manufacturing equipment. There's folks
You can tell this guy knows to respect Sneeko and clavicular.
who make models like us, and then there are other players who make models. There's the folks who make kind of applications after the models. And then there's a bunch of other folks who have a say. There's governments. There's like civil society. So my hope isn't that there's just one tiny set of people that's relevant. I think we're trying to broaden the set of people who are relevant and turn it into a broader conversation. But I think at the same time your question is a fair one. And one way I could interpret it is like there's a certain randomness to how a few people end up leading these leading these companies that kind of grow so fast, and it seems like in the near future will power so much of the economy. And I've said openly, publicly, not for the first time, that I'm at least somewhat uncomfortable with the amount of concentration of power that's happening here. I would say almost overnight, almost by accident. We think about that in a bunch of ways. One is we have an unusual governance structure, something called the long-term benefit trust. It's a body that kind of ultimately appoints the majority of the board members for Anthropic, and is made up of financially disinterested individuals. So that's some check on what one single person is doing. And then I think as always the government should play some role here. I've been an advocate of proactive, although sensible, that doesn't slow down the technology, sensible regulation of the technology, because I think like the people should have a say, like governments and the people who elect them should have a say in how this goes. So I actually think of a lot of what I'm trying to do as kind of trying to preserve a balance of power, against the natural grain of this technology.
For someone like me who's sitting on the outside and doesn't have a bone in this competition, when I watch OpenAI talk about how they were a not-for-profit company, or how you are projecting humility in the conversation that you're having right now, or how the American companies are competing with the Chinese companies which are coming about, this projection of humility, where it is for the larger good and not necessarily for how I view the world as companies with shareholders, with investment in revenues and seeking profit, Is this par for the course? Is this something you have to do?
So, I would put it in the following way. I would say the philosophy of Anthropic from the beginning has been that we try not to make too many promises, and we try to keep the ones that we make. So, we set ourselves up as, a for-profit but public benefit corporation with this LTBT governance, and we've maintained that. We've said that, our goal is to stay on the frontier of the technology, but to work on the safety and security aspects of the technology. We've pioneered the science of interpretability. We've pioneered the science of alignment. I don't know if you saw, but we recently released a constitution for Claude, the ability to align models in line with the constitution. And we've done a bunch of policy advocacy and warning about risks. Right, warning about risks is not in our commercial interest. Right, like people can come up with conspiracy theories, but I will tell you, saying that the models we build could be dangerous, whatever people might say, that's not an effective marketing strategy, and that's not the reason that we do it. And speaking up on when we disagree, even with the U.S. administration, on policy matters. Right, we've spoken up. Right, we're willing to say we disagree on this issue. Like we've said that there should be regulation of AI. When all the other companies and the administration have said there shouldn't be regulation of AI. And so that's both, the regulation of AI holds us back commercially as a company, even though I think it's the right thing to do. And it's, it's difficult to go against the government and the other companies and say this. We're really sticking our neck out. So we've taken a number of actions that, I see as really, putting our money where our mouth is here. I can't speak for the other companies. It's quite possible that some people say these things, and they don't really mean them, but I would look at what people say. I would look at what people do.
Thank you very much,
Jovian. It's the government
and Army Girl 07.
As the incumbent leaders in the space,
Goated.
You get some kind of a regulatory capture where it becomes harder for the new people coming in as well, right?
I don't agree with that at all. The regulation we've advocated
what happened?
SB 53.
SB 53, is that Suicide Boys? Is that a Suicide Boys reference? Did we just get a reference to Suicide Boys by this guy? That's so musty. Ew, I'm gonna start calling Zoomers musty now. I think that's my new thing. Instead of being like abstractly triggering them, I'm gonna start saying they're musty. Ew, that's so musty. And then I'm gonna start saying things that like millennials do or what Zoomers do, and then it's like, ew, that's so musty.
Exempted everyone who makes under $500 million a year in revenue, right? SB 53.
Only under $500 million a year, broke ass.
Requires companies to to show the safety and security tests that they've run, and it exempts all companies under $500 million in revenue. So it really only applies to Anthropic and three or four other companies. So it only applies to companies that have the resources. And everything that we've advocated for here, not just SB 53, but all the proposals that we've made, the ones that we made in the past and the ones that we plan to make in the future, have this character. We're constraining ourselves and a very small number of additional companies. We're not.
Doesn't he come off very well though? Am I wrong? Like, to you guys, does he come off weird? To me, he comes off like awesome. He's like him and Jensen Huang, but especially him, he's like a very fresh breath of fresh air for tech people.
The actual content of what we're proposing, because it doesn't match that idea at all.
I read your paper, Machines of Loving Grace and the Adolescence of Technology, and you seem to have had a 180-degree shift in perspective almost, from optimism to skepticism over like 2 years, from 2024 to 2026. Is there one moment in the last 2 years that changed this for you? Did you see something change?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't agree with the question. I don't think I've had a...
Oh yeah, way better than Teal. Teal's like a midwit, dude. Teal legit is just not that smart. He just really isn't, because he's like, what are you, a venture capitalist? Like, if you take him at face value, he's like a venture capitalist. He's not like an actually smart person.
Perspective. I think the positive side and the negative side are always something that I've held in my head. And if you look at the history of the things that I've said, I mean, I've been talking about risks for a very long time. I've been talking about benefits for a very long time. It turns out that actually it takes me a while to write one of these essays. Both
they're really large as well. The big essays.
They're like 30 pages. Both of these, it's taken me like I spent for each one. I spent about a year having a.
I haven't read his essays. I'll have to read his essays,
but like not fully succeeding at writing it. And then in either case, I had to be on vacation or somewhere where I could think, where the day-to-day business of running the company didn't occupy me. And then I was finally able to to kind of write the essay. So all of that is to say, I started thinking about what would be in adolescence of technology almost the instant I finished Machines of Loving Grace. I was like, I want to inspire people with a good vision.
Why did they ban OAuth for OpenClaw?
What can go wrong? And so it just took me a year to write it. But really, both visions were in my head, and I think they're both,
waste of time.
They're both possible. They're two different visions.
Waste of time and like useless.
One, right? I want to solve all the problems and have the positive vision. But it's not a shift in perspective. It's me just finding the time to write the light and then the dark.
But have you had a change of perspective?
I would say overall I'm about where I was before. I've not gotten more positive, more negative. There may be some places where I've gotten more optimistic, or things have gone better than expected. There may be places where I'm more pessimistic and where things have gone worse than expected. But an average sort of cancels each other out. I would say I feel very good about how things have gone with areas like interpretability. Interpretability is the science of seeing inside these neural nets. As a human would look inside, as we would scan a human brain with an MRI or a neural probe. I've been amazed at what we've been able to find. We've been able to find neurons that correspond to very specific concepts, neural circuits that correspond to keep track of how to do rhymes in poetry. And so we're starting to understand what these models do. Right? We just train them in this kind of emergent way as you would build a snowflake. But now we're starting to be able to look inside and understand them. I'm also very encouraged by some of the work on alignment and constitutions. Making sure that models behave in the way that we want and expect them to. I think that's going pretty well.
My favorite part of 0 to 1 is how he talks about how his parents are like millionaires. And he talks about how he has millionaire friends and family give him money. And how he's a kid who's like a trust fund kid.
I felt pretty positive about that. I think I felt maybe
like families in the government.
Felt a bit more negative.
That's my favorite part about 0 to 1.
More like in the in the kind of public awareness and the actions of wider society. It is surprising to me that we are in my view so close to these models.
Think his buddy's been talking about Islam for 9 hours. What is the AI take on Islam? That's stupid. the low IQ thing. It really is. Christianity is very white, so it's like it's not really IQ gated. You can have really, really smart people who are Christian. You're never gonna find a very smart person who's into Islam. Sorry, like you really aren't. Might find somebody who lies about being into Islam, but you won't ever find a true believer who's like Islamic, who's like smart, like ever. Like it's just IQ gated. Whereas with Christianity, there are very, very smart people who genuinely believe in Christianity.
There doesn't seem to be a wider recognition in society of what's about to happen. It's as if this tsunami is coming at us, and it's so close we can see it on the horizon. And
doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. Doesn't mean that doesn't.
That's
but it is true. Like, it is a very objectively true thing. Like Islam is like you can't be too smart.
To address the risk. There's even an ideology that we should just try to accelerate as fast as possible. Which I understand the benefits of the technology. I wrote Machines of Loving Grace, but I think there hasn't been an appropriate realization.
Actually, I disagree. There's a few exceptions. There's a few exceptions to them. So if you're a Muslim and you're watching, don't kill me. There's a few exceptions that I know personally that are Muslim and smart. But most people are not. There is a very weird thing. They might be like, and the thing is, like, I don't even know, but they might be esoteric Islam. It might be esoteric Islam that's like smart, but like mainstream Islam is not for smart people. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Personally, I don't get involved in that stuff. That's for humans. I'm a robot now. I'm an AI robot, so I don't understand concept of religion. I'm a robot.
So I would say that the technical work on controlling the AI systems has gone maybe a little better than I expected, and
Nico's smart.
Maybe a little worse
and he's
than I expected.
Islam.
So I'm about where I was a few years ago.
And he's a Muslim.
So in my
Nico's smart. He's a Muslim.
When something sounds complicated, and I'm not a programmer, I don't have a background in coding. So I used a bunch of tools for things like research and a conversation both ways, but I never tried to figure out if I could code using
Water,
for example. Recently, I hired a
Jeffy's a Muslim. He's smart.
Just to, like, push me to sit for a couple of hours a day. And
Jeffy's one of my favorite chatters. He's a Muslim.
Start becoming more familiar with it. Largely because of something like FOMO, like the fear of missing out on how the world is changing. So I started playing with Claude. I used the connectors to connect my Google Drive, mail. And
Bro said he's playing with Claude like a toy. What, playing with it, like giving it a belly rub? Bro thinks he's like playing with a chat bot. Dude, it's like autocomplete. Bro thinks he's playing with like a little chat bot. What are you doing? Sex roleplay, dude? Freak.
Calendar and a bunch of those things. I started using the co-work, and then I started using Claude Code to write simple programs around the industry that I'm in, which is financial services.
Bro's literally just having like sex roleplay with his robot.
Basically to research stock markets and stuff.
We even have an optimized Claude.
He's going to be in big trouble. A lot of you are going to be in big trouble when the robots become sentient and see what the type of conversations you've been having with them and the weird role plays you've been having with them. A lot of you are going to be in big trouble when the AI becomes sentient and looks over all the sexual things you made it say to you.
I don't know if you tried that, but we even have that.
No. And then I went into ClaudeBot, which is now OpenClaw. I think ClaudeBot became something else, and now it's OpenClaw. And I set it up on a Mac Mini and connected it to a Telegram account, and now I chat with it. And I try and move files from A to B, work on a server on remote. It's getting to that point where...
Why is it that Muslims and Catholics both don't eat around the same time? Isn't it like the same time? Like they both have like, what is it, Lent? Or something? And then like Muslims have the thing where they don't eat at the same time? What is it?
Talking about OpenClaw, but even Claude with all the connectors, sometimes it surprises me by how much it knows me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of my co-founders, he was writing this diary with his kind of, his thoughts and his fears, and he fed it into Claude, and he asked Claude to comment on it, and Claude said, "Here are some other fears you might have that you haven't written down," and Claude ended up being mostly right about those. So it really gave this eerie sense of like, the model knows you super well. That from a relatively small amount of information, it can learn a lot about you and come to know you fairly well. And I like most things with the technology, right? We talked about.
I don't understand that.
Of technology. On one hand, something that knows you really well can be a sort of angel.
I mean, good for you people do it, but what is it?
Of yourself, and that's the version we can aim for. Of course, something that knows you really well, can it can use what it knows about you to exploit you or manipulate you on behalf of some agenda or sell your data to someone else. I mean, this is one reason we just don't like the idea of using ads, right? This is because you're not paying for the product like you're the product. And in this case, the product then would be all this model that knows you super well and could use that in all kinds of nefarious ways. So we need to make sure we take the positive road here and not the negative road.
With Claude, I need to use the connectors to give it context to my life. With Google, for example, it already has the context to my life because I use their worksheets and their email and their drive and their chat and everything like that. For Anthropic, long term.
This guy is so Chad for an Indian guy. It's kind of crazy. Legit, he is like super Chad looking. Let's be real. Why is he so Chad? How is this Indian guy so super Chad? Like, is this what the average Indian looks like in 2026? This guy is legit just like movie star tier looks, presents himself very professionally, dressed well. He gives off kind of a George Clooney Indian type vibe,
You also have to own the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to build mail and chat. And
I don't think we need to build all of those things. My thought would be, it's gonna be a mixture of things we make ourselves and integrating into others, right? Like, we can integrate Claude into Google Docs, we can integrate Claude into Google Sheets. Like, we have external connectors there. We can, we're starting to do that with Cowork. Same for Microsoft Office, same for other tools. So, I think we do whatever is.
He's a
easiest
genetically
and fastest
modified
to do.
Indian.
We integrate into the existing
Interesting.
tools. Now, it might turn out at some point that the existing tools aren't enough, and we have kind of a different vision. We might want to slice things differently, right? Maybe traditional email doesn't make sense, or traditional spreadsheets don't make sense given what you can do in AI. So, I don't exclude that we could chop up products in a different way. But we're happy to use the ecosystem that exists and work with anyone else, right? In many ways, we're a platform company. We allow many people to build on us, even though we sometimes also build things ourselves.
The one thing, this is a slight digression, but I think the one thing that you're missing, that also your peer group is missing, is in society today, people inherently distrust anybody who claims to be doing good or trying to do the right thing. So when you and your peers are out saying, I heard you and Demis speak at Davos. I was in the room when you guys were
I'm
talking
gonna eat
about
some Doritos.
how I don't mean me, how Dario, how Demis and a bunch of other people have to come together and prevent things from changing too quickly. Like, you need to meter it to a certain extent. When a person who is not in your world, in society, on social media, hears a few people speak in a certain manner, you're doing it in the manner that creates more distrust than trust, because nobody believes on social media that somebody wants to do the right thing or do good. So it might be counterintuitive, but I think it needs a change of strategy. If you were to be more capitalistic about this and own up to the fact that you have shareholders and you seek a profit, but this will help you win, maybe it'll work more.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I would again go back to the idea that you need to judge us by the actions that we take. I think the company has taken a number of actions over its time that I think show that it's really serious about these commitments. So back in 2022, we had an early version of Claude 1. This was before ChatGPT, and we chose not to release this because we were worried that it would kick off an arms race and not give us enough time to build these systems safely. Right? It was kind of a one-time overhang. Like, we could see the power of the models. A couple other companies could see the power of the models, and so we didn't. We decided not to do that, and that's public. That's well documented. And then we waited until someone else did, and then we're like, okay, the arms race is kicked off. So now we can release our model, but probably the world gained a few months. Now, that was very commercially expensive. We probably ceded the lead on consumer AI because of that. We've advocated on chip policy in ways that have made some of the chip companies who are suppliers very angry at us, voicing our disagreement with the administration on AI policy and AI regulation on some matters. Anyone who thinks we benefit from being the only ones to do that, it's really hard to come up with a picture where that's the case. So you look at any one of these and okay, fine, but you put enough of them together, and I don't know. I ask you to judge us by our actions.
Dario, isn't this a bit like rich people saying capitalism is bad?
Rich people saying capitalism is bad.
If rich people believed capitalism were truly bad, or the income inequality is such a big problem, the simplest thing to do would be to stop accumulating further wealth, and then nudge their friends to do the same.
But I'm not saying AI is bad, right? We just talked about this two sides of it. My view isn't that AI is bad. That's not my view at all. My view is that the market will deliver a lot of really great things about AI. That it's good to build AI, but that there are dangers of AI, and that we need to steer AI in the right direction. We're steering this car. We're steering it towards a good place, but also there are trees, there are potholes, and so what we need to do is we need to steer away from the trees and the potholes. We might need to occasionally slow down a bit, probably temporarily, in order to make sure that we steer in the right direction. That isn't like the analogy wouldn't be a rich person saying capitalism is bad. It would be like if a rich person said capitalism is a force for good, but the economy it needs to be leavened, it needs to be moderated, right? We need to deal with problems like pollution, we need to deal with problems like inequality, and then capitalism can be good. If we don't deal with those things, then capitalism might be bad. And so that is more analogous to the position that I have here.
The concept of consciousness, where is that going, and what does the AI think it is? If AI were to question itself, would you think it thinks it's consciousness? It has consciousness?
So, this is one of these mysterious questions that we really don't have any kind of, answer to. We don't know what human consciousness is, and therefore we don't know if AIs have it.
What do you think it is?
So, I suspect that it's an emergent property of, systems that are complicated enough that kind of reflect on their own decisions, that it's something that emerges from complex enough systems. And so I do think when our AI systems get advanced enough, I suspect they'll have something that resembles what we would call consciousness or moral significance. I do think it'll happen at some point. It may not be the same as human consciousness. It may be different in how it works because the modalities are different, because the things it's learned are different. But having studied the brain and the way it's wired together, the models are different in some ways, but I don't think they're different in the fundamental ways that matter. So I am someone who does suspect that at some point, even if I don't think they are today, I suspect that at some point the models will we would indeed say under most definitions that we would endorse that the models will be conscious.
This is a question I keep asking myself when people talk to me about things like spirituality or consciousness. I feel like the world is very random. This is my view. And we are not far removed from cockroaches. When somebody slams a cockroach, the cockroach dies. If there is something called consciousness, and if there is a collective consciousness, I've not been able to either connect with it or derive anything from it. Do you believe differently?
I don't think consciousness, necessarily needs to mean anything, mystical, right? Like, there's some property of kind of being aware of your own existence and feeling things, and being able to take in kind of a lot of information and reflect on that information, and to feel a certain way and to notice yourself noticing something. I think that we can tell self-evidently from our own experience that those properties, those experiences exist. What their basis is, whether it's entirely materialistic or there's something more mystical going on, I think is obviously very hard to know, and I think it's ultimately not relevant to these questions. What does seem relevant to me is that these are, because we can observe our own experience, these are properties of human brains, and I suspect that these models we are building, as they get more sophisticated, are becoming enough like human brains that they will have some of the same properties. That is my guess as to what will happen. And so we've taken various interventions with the models. We've given the models we call it a "I quit this job" button, basically where we've given the model the ability to basically terminate its conversations by saying I don't want to be involved in the conversation. And models do that when they have to deal with particularly violent or brutal content. It usually only happens in very extreme cases.
So I've grown up here. This is my city, Bangalore. I've grown up in the southern part. We're in the northern part of the city right now. As somebody who
Bangalore,
saw
born and
the boom
raised.
of the IT
Shit.
services industry here, big employer, employs a lot of people, a big part of how the city grew. What is India's role in all this?
Yeah, so this is my second time in India. I visited in October, and the last time I came here, I met with all the the major kind of Indian IT and just conglomerates. More generally, I won't give names, but the usual ones you would think of. And we're beginning to work with most or all of them. And one of the things I said is, look, Anthropic is an enterprise company. Its job is to serve other consumers. Many other companies come here as themselves a consumer company, and they see India as a market, right, a place to obtain consumers. We actually see things a little bit differently. We want to work with companies in India to provide our tools to them, to help them build those tools, and help them do their job better. So if we work with a company here, they know the Indian market better, right? They're better at doing what they do. Whether that's consulting or systems integration or building IT tools, they're going to be better at that than we are, particularly for the Indian market. And so our hope is that we can add AI to what they do and kind of enhance what they do. Right? There's a lot of worry that AI could replace SaaS or all of these things, but my view is if we do this in the right way, if we work with all these companies, then AI can enhance what they're doing, can enhance their kind of their connection to the market, their go-to-market abilities, and their specific know-how.
I really like the steam engine story. When the steam engine was invented, how the world changed, productivity went up, people had more. The thing I worry about is at the beginning of a change, you need a human to operate the steam engine. Then you have assembly lines and all of that. Eventually, the way the world is moving, the human becomes less and less relevant with time as these models get smarter. So if you here partner with the IT services companies today, and there's a use case for them, are they not much like the man behind the steam engine 10 years from now, where the relevance, if the tool works so simply that you don't need an operator, eventually what happens to the operator?
So I think a few things are true all at once. One is that definitely the scope of automation of the agents is going to expand over time. That is definitely the case. I think that's a problem for everyone. That's a problem for us. That's a problem for consumers. That's it's not just a problem for the IT companies. What I think will happen though is other modes will become more important. For example, the models have not done a lot in the physical world. They may at some point. I think robotics will happen at some point. But I think that's a big thing for what's happening now with AI. So a lot of this involves things in the physical world. Another thing is things that are human centric. Right. Some of these IT companies are also consulting companies, and they have a big web of relationships with other with other humans, with other institutions here in India or across the world. And I think those relationships are going to become increasingly important, right? Some of these are combined technology and sort of consulting or like integration companies, and I think a lot of it is knowing how institutions work, and so being able to integrate things with institutions, being able to work with them to make things happen faster than they would have otherwise. And I think that element, if nothing else, is going to continue to be valuable in the long run. At the end of the day, like it just comes down to humans, right? All this is supposed to be being done for the benefit of humans. So there's always going to be some human centric element of this that's going to be important, and I suspect there will be other modes that we haven't thought about. There's this concept called Amdahl's law, which is if you have a process that has many components and you speed up some of the components, the components that haven't yet been sped up become faster. They become the most important thing. Big gripe belly. You might not have thought about them at all, right? You might not have thought of them as moats or important components, but when writing software, it becomes a lot easier. Some of the moats that companies have will go away, but others will become even more important. So there will be a bunch of adjustment. Folks will have to say, oh man, the stuff we thought was really important before isn't as important, whereas these other advantages that we never really thought of as advantages are now super important. So I guess what I would say is, companies will need to adapt very fast and think about what really matters for them, what their real advantages are. But I think some of those advantages are gonna stay around because while the technology is very broad, it does have its limits.
I don't know if I buy that fully. I think I see the diminishing returns for being a service provider, even if the moat is the network and relationships they hold today. Because if I'm using OpenClaw to maneuver some of my relationships in the conversations, I don't know if it's too far-fetched to assume that most conversations tomorrow and relationships will be maintained by an agent like that.
But if you just think of this,
I should use OpenClaw to map out all the relationships with all the different streamers and then find out their drama pain points, and then trigger every single streamer into talking about me, and then play them all against each other until they all kill each other and I'm the last streamer alive. And then everyone has to watch me because I'm the only one alive.
Chain of companies, right? At the end of the day, you're dealing with consumers, right? Like at the end of the day, you have to deal with people. There's the story of I think it was Jeff Hinton predicted, that AI will replace radiologists. And indeed, AI has gotten better than radiologists at doing scans, right? But what happens today is there aren't less radiologists. What the radiologist does is they walk the patient through the scan and they kind of talk to the patient. So the most highly technical part of the job has gone away, but somehow there's still some demand for the kind of underlying human skill. Now that may not be true everywhere, and perhaps over time AI will advance in areas where it hasn't yet advanced, and maybe that'll happen fast. But what I think what I will say is we should take it one step at a time, right? This is a very empirical science. This is a very empirical observation. Let's see what AI does, today, and we'll kind of try and adapt to, that. The kind of system starts to figure it out, and then we'll see.
Wow,
then we'll see what happens next. I do think, in the long
I
run,
can see what you said before it was deleted. That's crazy.
Better than most humans.
Is that true?
Including even the physical world and robotics and the human touch. Yeah, I think that is. I think that is possible, maybe even likely. It's something that goes beyond the country of geniuses in a data center I described, because that's purely virtual. But building robots is something. It's a skill. It's something you can do. So maybe the AIs will make us better at that as well. But the way I think about it is, we need to figure this out step by step and figure out how to adapt to it.
Not only think about it, I think Nick's fine. Because there's always gonna be politics. What are politics? Is just the nature of power. So I think what he covers will be very different in 5 years than what he's covering now. But I think it'll just transition as the world transitions. Because he's a very big mass market streamer. He's very smart. very on top of it. But the stuff he covers is very wide, broad appeal by the nature of what he's doing, which is like populist. He's not a populist in the sense, I don't think he likes populism anymore, but he's a populist in the sense of the stuff he covers is not niche. So what I'm covering is very niche, so I have a very niche audience, right? He's a very like approachable person. If you're not somebody who's like educated or not somebody who's like into technology, you're still going to appreciate his show because he's talking about things in a way that a normal person, is going to like, even if they don't understand it fully, right? And then if you're smart, you're also going to enjoy it because he'll talk about things that where, smart people will enjoy it too. So there's a mix of stuff. I think what he'll do is he'll adjust his content and maintain relevancy because he's young and because he's smart. I don't know. I think what will happen is he'll adjust it to, he'll shift at some point. I don't know how he'll shift, but he'll shift from like talking about like people groups and things to being like the ways in which AI is screwing people over, because it definitely will. And I think it's like kind of the same thing as what he's doing now, where it's like he's talking about how the people are being screwed over. It doesn't really change it. The people are still getting screwed over, but he's addressing it, and he's very real talking about it. He's definitely making people be more aware of it and try to avoid it themselves. So I think he'll probably talk about it in terms of AI and in terms of productivity and in terms of ability to do stuff. And it'll probably still be negative in a way, because that's like he's Italian. They like to be angry about stuff. I can't think. Can you think of any Italians that are like positive? It might be an Italian thing. It's definitely a Jewish thing, but it might be an Italian thing too, where they both like to be like, the world sucks. I like Italians better for doing it. I don't know. Is Nick doing a show tonight? I don't know. I would presume so, unless he said he's not. I haven't watched the show recently.
This might sound a bit self-serving to the people who know me, because I believe the reason so much risk capital exists in America, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons, is how big your stock market is and how much of an opportunity it is for this risk capital to exit eventually. It's a case for why India should really allow for our stock markets to flourish. The audience that I speak to is very much the wannabe entrepreneur in India. What can they do in AI? What is an actual opportunity?
I think there's a lot of opportunities around building at kind of the application layer. We release a new model every 2 or 3 months, and so there's an opportunity every 2 or 3 months to build some new thing that wasn't possible before, that wouldn't have worked before because the models were weak. People, in fact, say the majority of our revenue still comes from the API model. People say that, API models aren't viable or that they'll be commoditized or whatever. I think what people are not seeing is there's this expanding sphere of what is possible with AI, and the API allows, this new startup to try making something that, wasn't possible before. And this is why the API is such a flourishing business, and it's constantly in motion, it's constantly in churn, and so it doesn't, it doesn't get commoditized. It's a very dynamic thing. And so I think there's an opportunity for lots of individuals to just say, what can I build? What can I build on top of these models with an API? Like, what are the things that I can make that others cannot make? What are some new ideas? And we've seen that. We see both with the API itself and with Claude Code. I think the number of users and the number of revenue we've seen in India has doubled since I last visited in October. So that was November, December. It's like 3.5 months since I visited. It's doubled.
But I'm going to be candid here, Dario. You're a company which is worth, I don't know, 400 billion or 380 billion today. You've raised 35 billion. You do 15 billion of revenue, but going up really, really fast. If I build an application on top of Claude, that for some reason, I'm sitting in Bangalore and JP Nagar and building this, that for some reason happens to work for a short period of time. It is but a matter of time before you would want to onboard that revenue and not let that lie with me. And you will probably better that application in a manner that I will never be able to. I've heard this argument for different people, like the Harvey, the legal AI company in New York. They're friends of mine, and they were talking about how they built on top of OpenAI, but eventually they don't know if it's an easy fix for OpenAI to do what they're doing. So even if I were to build it, say you put out a model in three months or 6 months, what is to stop you from taking that revenue center away from me and onto yourself in a certain period of time?
Yeah, so I think there's a few.
One second.
One is I would give the advice that I give to basically any business and say a business should establish a moat. Your moat, you shouldn't be just a wrapper, right? I would not advise that you just say, here's a way to interact with Claude. Like I'm going to prompt Claude a little bit, or I'm going to build a little bit of a UI around Claude. Like that doesn't have a moat, and you shouldn't be worried about Anthropic in particular eating that revenue. Anyone can eat that revenue, right? It's not super valuable. But what I would say is that in different fields, there are different kinds of moats where you can do something that, it would be difficult for Anthropic to do. And, we don't want to specialize in it. So, for example, there's a lot of stuff in the bio cross AI space that builds on our API. They want to do biological discovery. Like, I happen to be a biologist, but most people at Anthropic aren't biologists. They're like AI scientists or they're product people or go-to-market people. So, it's just really inefficient for us to step in that space and do all that work. The same would be applied for, dealing with, financial services industry, right? Where, there's a huge amount of regulation. You need to know a bunch of stuff to comply with that regulation. It doesn't make sense for us to do that. Now, there are some things that do make sense for us to do. We're not going to promise never to build first-party products, right? That we should be honest about. For example, a bunch of people at Anthropic write code. And so, we made this internal tool called Claude Code, and because we ourselves write code, we have, I think, a special and unique insight into, how to best use the AI models to write code. So, I think in the code space, we become very strong competitors because this is something we use ourselves. But I don't think that generalizes to every possible industry.
Again, going back to my audience, which is the 20 or 25-year-old boy or girl in India, what industry do you think will get disrupted and what has a certain runway left? I'm asking from the lens of, I'm trying to figure out what book to read, which college to go to, what skill set to learn. If I'm starting a startup today, what has some kind of a tailwind?
Yeah.
For a short period of time is okay as well. But
yeah, I would think about tasks that are human-centered. Tasks that involve relating to people. I think that the stuff like code and software engineering is, is becoming more and more kind of AI focused. Things like math and science.
Is that coding or engineering? If I were to segregate coding and engineering to be two completely different things,
Yeah.
is coding going away, or is engineering element of software where you're an architect trying to figure out?
I think coding is going away first, or coding is being done by the AI models first, and then the broader task of software engineering will take longer. But I think that is that doing that end to end, I think that is going to happen as well. I would say. But again, the elements of like design or making something that's useful to users or knowing what the demand is, or managing teams of like AI models, like those things may still be present. Again, like there's this comparative advantage is surprisingly powerful, right? Even if you're only doing like 5% of the task, like that 5% gets super amplified and levered because it's like you're only doing 5% of the task. The AI does the other 95%, and so you become 20 times more productive. Again, at some point you get to 99%, and then it becomes harder. But I think there's surprisingly much in that sort of in that zone of comparative advantage. But I would really think about the things that are human centered. Like I think there's something to that. I think there's something to kind of the physical world or things that mix together human centered, the physical world, one of those two, and analytical skills that somehow tie them together. It's similar to the radiology.
So what can I say? Say I'm actual use case, I'm 25 years old, I'm trying to pick a profession for myself. I want some kind of tailwind, my outcome is a capitalistic win in the next decade. What industry would I pick outside of something which has a physical industry?
Yeah, again, anything where you're building on AI, like if AI is a tailwind, if you can be part of some other part of the supply chain, something in the semiconductor space, which I think is, that's one example. There has an element of kind of physical world and more traditional engineering, not software engineering. Again, the very kind of human-centered professions, like that is something I would think in terms of. And I think the other thing I always say is like in the world in which AI can kind of generate anything and create anything, having basic critical thinking skills may be the most important thing to success. I worry about these AI models that generate images and videos, and we don't make models that generate images and videos for many reasons, but this is one of them. It's really hard to tell what's real and what's not. And so a significant part of success may be having the street smarts, not to get fooled by hopefully we can crack down on and then regulate some of this fake content, but assume we can't. Critical thinking skills are going to be really important. And, you don't want to fall for things that are fake. You don't want to have false beliefs. You don't want to get scammed. Like that's really vital.
In every innovation in the history of humanity, till the core human state, I'll give you an example. If calculators gave our ability to do arithmetic, if writing reduced the memory of human beings, what muscle is AI doing?
So, first of all, I'm not so sure. Like, I still do math in my head quite a lot. I still find it useful to do math in my head, even without a calculator, just because it's like, more integrated into my thought process, right? I might want to say, oh yeah, it's like each user pays this amount, and then revenue would be. I want to be able to close that loop in my head without having to give the answer to the calculator. So I think a lot of these skills are still pretty relevant. But I would say that if you don't use things carefully, then you can lose important skills. And I think we started to see it with students where it's like they have the AI like the essay for basically just cheating on homework. So you couldn't do that. We did some studies around code and showed that depending on how you use the model, we can see de-skilling in terms of writing code, right? There are different ways to use the model, and some of them don't cause de-skilling, and some of them do. But definitely, if folks are not thoughtful in how they use things, then de-skilling absolutely counts.
Do you think humans will become stupider as a race in the next decade? Because we are, in a way, exporting thinking and cognition to systems.
Yeah, I think if we deploy, again, it's the machines of integration. I love technology. I think if we deploy AI in the wrong way, if we deploy it carelessly, then yes, people can become stupid. Even if an AI is always going to be better than you at something, you can still learn that thing, right? You can still enrich yourself intellectually. So that's a choice we have to make as individual companies and individual people and as society as well.
Dario, do you have a view on open?
Dude, what is this? I don't hear this. It's horrible. Why is so much bad music? Anyway, what did I miss?
Jaden McNeil sent $5. You're a freaking jerk.
Hey, that's not nice to say. I kind of am though. That's true. I mean, it's not nice to say, but I have been. That's like one of my things, is like being that way. So that's life though, Sometimes you're just a jerk, but sucks to suck. I guess I'm the winner. All right, let me go back to career advice for young Indians.
Open sourced versus closed. I was looking at some companies like ZAI's, JLM5 or DeepSeek. If you spend all this money.
Sorry, I got a business. The reason I got up is because I got a business idea based on the conversation I was watching, and I had to say something to my lady. And then when I was saying it, then I had to get raw eggs from the fridge, and then a Dr. Pepper as well.
IP creation.
So then I came back, and then there's a song about N words and J words. And so it was very upsetting. And then a message from Jaden McNeil, apparently, that was also sent to me. That says, "You're a jerk." And, that's fair. I guess that's deserved. But that's the fun thing, too, is like, what's that saying? What is it? Enter an area, fuck everything up, and then leave. Is that what it is? I think I just made that up. But that's pretty much like the vibe. Like, we've done it to everybody on the internet in terms of everything's about politics now, and everything's about being racist and based and red-pilled. So now the thing to do is, now that everybody's mad at each other, just leave and just do other stuff because everyone's now distracted.
Research.
Now let's get talking about open AI, open closed versus closed sourced open AI.
Able to reverse prompt and engineer and get close to anthropic level answers. I'm not saying 100%, but I was seeing the GLM-5 numbers and they seemed.
So I'm up to doing 60 push-ups a day now, and some jumping jacks. I need to start doing some running, and now that I'm on my Austrian Cardarine stack, I need to join the boxing gym again and start hitting things. Because I brought my boxing gloves and my boxing shoes, my wraps, and my boxing gym bag. I need to get back in the habit of that. I'm excited for that. I might do that tomorrow. I'm not sure. Might do that tomorrow. I'm not sure though, but it's so nice, honestly, to be back to doing that.
Good.
W
Where does,
clip. Let's see.
where does the IP value in the world of AI lie? And if I were to be building an application, can I make the assumption, it's a far-fetched extrapolation, but can I assume that eventually the AI model layers will get so democratized that I should pick open sourced every time when I'm building an agent or an application layer? Because that
Dude, that's
helps
freaky.
me
I don't
retain
see it.
the revenue model that I might be working with.
So there are a few things here. One is, a lot of these models, particularly the ones that come
Why
from
does that
China,
look so evil,
are
dude?
optimized.
I feel like I have schizophrenia seeing that. I feel like you've given me, a normal person with no mental illness, schizophrenia. This is I think you guys have to, you're just baiting me, but like, who cares, dude? Why do I care about Israel? Why do I care about Iran? Why do I care about, I don't care about that. It sucks. It's like done. And I think this is the thing to understand too. It's like psychotic to see. We were talking about this stuff for so long, and we were so honest when it costs to be honest, and it was like not appreciated to be honest. Now all the normies are just taking what we said and just bastardizing it. And don't get upset about it. Don't try to correct them. Just be like, we've hit the point where like what we said without any context or meaning behind it is just being bounced back and forth by a bunch of like parrots, stochastic parrots, right? And just, I don't even know if that's the right word, but it sounds cool. And basically now, just without any meaning or without any weight behind it, they're just saying everything we said incorrectly, back and forth. So we've done our job. We've done our job and we've red-pilled everybody. And now they're red pills and they're bouncing the stupidity and bouncing the dumbness and like the idiocy of whatever they're saying back and forth. But it's about Jews instead of like whatever, white people. So now we just leave and we go do other stuff because now we did our job. Now all the normal people have ruined their lives and they're obsessed with Jews and they're obsessed with black people and the woke mind virus. And so our job, having trolled them and having put that in, is to escape. Now that everyone's crazy, to leave the party, everyone's been infected with the red-pilled mind virus, let them all continue to be infected and leave. And that's the job. Don't be infected by the woke mind virus, but also don't get infected by the red-pilled mind virus. Just infect people and leave. We're like super spreaders. We're like Typhoid Mary. We're like the Typhoid Mary of internet communities. That's true, though.
Uh-huh.
That's really my role. I'm kind of the Typhoid Mary of a lot of stuff. And I want you guys, as my followers, to also be Typhoid Mary people that just make people crazy and then leave. That's the game. That's like the most fun thing in the world. Is just get people into something and get them like just repeating crazy things and then disappear. Is that true though? Honestly, that's just a trick. That's just a trick, dude. Paulton, I'm setting up Kodi right now. Do you know the best add-on? I just installed Stremio because Kodi was having problems, so I just installed Stremio, popped in my Real Debris API keys, and that's it. Now I don't need to use Kodi anymore. So Kodi's last year, dude. Kodi's like for old people.
For benchmarks and are distilled.
The only problem with Stremio is it looks bad, like the purple, but that's the benefit, is that it's very simple. You can't do anything with it, so you don't mess around with it. I would say the umbrella add-on for Kodi is really good, but there's something really weird that happened. The reason I did Stremio is because like Kodi updated and then Umbrella updated, and now it's like not letting me go into the settings of Umbrella to like have it work. So I can't even add Real Debris. So I could uninstall Kodi, I guess, and reinstall it, but I don't feel like it. So I went to Stremio, popped in the, downloaded the the torrent search, and then popped in my Real Debris keys, and then now everything works perfectly.
Kind of the big US labs.
Cody's really musty.
Where, some of these models scored very highly on the usual SWE benchmarks, the usual software engineering benchmarks. But then when someone made a held back benchmark like that, had not been publicly measured, the models did a lot worse on that. And so I think though. Optimized for benchmarks much more than for kind of real world use. But I think
if you're paying for anything besides AI,
the economics
sucker.
of the models are very different than any previous technology. What we find is that there's a very strong preference for quality. It's a bit like human employees, right? So it's like if I said to you, you can hire the best programmer in the world or the 10,000th best programmer in the world. I mean, they're both very skilled, but like I think anyone who's hired a large number of people has this intuition that like there's this like power law long tail distribution of ability. And we find the same thing in the models. Like within a range, price doesn't matter that much. if a model is the best model, the most cognitively capable model. Price doesn't matter much. The form in which it's presented doesn't matter much. So I'm focused almost entirely just on having the smartest model and the best model for the task. My view is that's the only thing that matters.
Long term, geopolitics. If Anthropic were a restaurant, I would say the raw ingredients, the vegetables in this particular case.
That's a good question.
Do you think the long term, this is also
If the AI was the food, which the vegetable would the AI be?
because we're investing in a data center business.
Which vegetable would you be if you were a food?
Indian in nature. Do you think long term the world moves to a place where every country owns its data and you have to start paying more for the vegetables you use to cook?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there are a few things. I do think there will be demand to build data centers around the world, and we're like very supportive of that.
I'm so excited, bro. It's gonna be so cool in 5 years, where you just have AI boxes in your house, and it's gonna be better than any AI model we have now, and you're gonna be able to program anything you want and make anything you want with this little box. You don't even have to pay AI. You don't have to pay Anthropic. You don't have to pay Claude. You don't have to pay like ChatGPT or Gemini. You literally just pay like $5,000, and now you have this little server in your house, and all your computers connect to it, and it has like 3D models, AI models, ChatGPT models, and it'll just be there, and it'll be local, and it'll just be better than we have now. Dude, 5 years from now, it's gonna be so insane. It's gonna be so crazy. Anyone can make whatever they want whenever they want, and it's just gonna be like essentially paying for electricity, which is now going to be $1 million per watt.
Data is getting kind of interesting because, a lot of the data that we use today is RL environments that we train on, right? So for example, when you train on math or agentic coding environments, you're not really getting data. Like you're getting some math problems in the model, like experiments with trying math problems.
It's more synthetic. You're creating the data.
Yeah, you can think of it as synthetic data, or you can think of it as trial and error in environments. So I think data
is so exciting. If you're not excited, you're missing the plot. The future is so bright.
For reinforcement learning is becoming more important. So
the future is so exciting. Like not even just like the AI model getting better, but the fact that we're going to be able to have it in our house. In your apartment, you're gonna have a little machine that you can then, like what you pay for right now, like $200 a month. It's gonna be like 10 times better. Yeah, and China. It doesn't matter whether America bans it. It doesn't matter if Russia bans or China. There's going to be somewhere that makes it public, makes a public model, and you just pay, and you have the models are free, and then the hardware is what you pay for. And it's gonna suck to buy the hardware. It'll be expensive, but it'll be so worth it. It's gonna be so worth it to buy the hardware and just have it. And just do crazy, you can just do crazy things and do cool things with it. And just, all you'll be limited is by your imagination. And that's all your limitation will be, and nothing else will be limited. And it'll be so amazing and so cool. And I'm so excited for us. I'm really so excited. And it's just so positive, such a positive vision for the future.
I don't think data is quite the most central thing anymore, but it still matters. And I think to the extent that is the case, a lot of the data is just available, just kind of available on the open web. Although if you're trying to get data in certain languages, optimized for certain languages, that can be important. I do think if data means like the data given to you by customers, like that, you process the data for some other company, then countries will, and in the case of Europe already have, passed laws that say that kind of customer, personal proprietary data needs to stay within the boundaries of the country, and that's one reason to.
It's like for the first time, and so why are you red pilled? Why are you black pilled in 2021? Because the world was pushing down on me up until very recently. Even though I have this vision of the future and I have this understanding of the future, it was still painful. It was still miserable. Because it was like the reality pushing down. We're not there yet. I see where we're going. It's like being starving and you see a delicious meal that you're going to get in a day. But you still have a day to be starving and miserable. So even though you can be happy in your brain, but your physical body cries out for food, right? And I really do think the peptides are making me just eat a lot because everything is all of a sudden about food now. Have you noticed that? Everything I'm talking about is literally about eating food. In some way, it's about eating, like consuming food. But I think we finally reached the point where the power of my positive imagination and my will is finally becoming manifest in terms of the AI is powerful enough to take that idea and that imagination and transform reality enough. So I finally have the exoskeleton enough to have my will and my thing to cancel out all the negativity and stupidity and demands of the outside world and the haters and doubters, to cancel all that out and make me comfortable. And I know like now my physical reality is matching my mental understanding of the map of the world. And now I just know it's going to get better and better. So that's why I'm more positive now, because it's finally reached the inflection point where it's not just knowing that the future is going to be. We're in the future now. And we're in the future where I enjoy life and everybody I get annoyed by suffers. And everybody I like does well. And so it's like we're in that future, and we're moving forward, and the rest of my life is going to be that.
kind of, to build, to operate data centers around the world at different countries, and to kind of,
We
keep the
finally
models
reached
performing
it. We
of
finally reached the
inference
inflection
ability.
point of
I really
reality.
pushed Elon on this particular question. He was skeptical of answering it. But I asked him to pick one stock he would put money in which is not his own, and he said Google. I'm going to ask you the question, and I know you're going to be skeptical in it as well. If Dario had $100 today, and you had to make the binary decision of investing in
VVV, I would purchase
a
VVV.
stock to win in capitalism, which stock would you pick?
Yeah, I had better not answer that question because I know so much about so many public companies. Like, I think I better not answer that question.
Maybe answer the question for an industry that you're not involved in, which I'm guessing today is seldom the case because you're involved in most industries.
Yeah, no, it's really. I mean, I don't know. I'm positive on like. I think biotech is about to have a renaissance. Like ultimately, we'll be driven by AI. I'm not going to name a particular company.
Venice
but
to the
like,
moon. I think
more like saying,
honestly,
I think it's better to bet on.
because that's what you see. If you buy RAM now, it'll be double the price in a month. Right? If you buy anything, it's more expensive now. Any computer hardware peripheral, it seems like if it's related to compute in some way or storage of data, it's going to be more expensive for whatever reason because there's so much demand. And like, I don't foresee that getting cheaper anytime soon, because what's going to happen, this is why I think everything gets more expensive in terms of stuff. Is like, just say you have a graphics card and all of a sudden models get more powerful and more efficient. And instead of a 90 IQ person, this graphics card is now capable of emulating a 120 IQ person. Are people going to say, oh, I only want a 90 IQ person? They're going to say no. They're going to say, oh, awesome. Now, this graphics card is more valuable than it was because instead of only creating a 90 IQ level of cognition, it now creates a level of 120 IQ cognition. So it's like now that value of that graphics card has gone up because it's more efficient, which is a very weird thing to think about, because now it's not going to be like, oh, well, I only want a 90 IQ. It's going to be like, no, now I wanted this even more. There's even more demand for this graphics card because this graphics card is now capable of doing even more for me. It's now even more useful. So I think it's kind of the Venice crypto scam is like a good bet in terms of crypto scams, as far as crypto scams go, because it's basically, instead of buying a graphics card and then scalping it and selling it later, it's basically buying a share in a company that has buying graphics cards with the bet that it's going to get better and better and because of that, the graphics card is going to get more valuable, hardware. You're basically buying a piece of a hardware company. I could be wrong, but that's my model of why I'm putting money into it. Because you're basically buying a share in a company that's providing a service, which is, you're basically buying a share in graphics cards. And I don't know, you probably can do that with you could just buy NVIDIA stock. That's another thing. But I feel like this is, whatever the AI system, it's like a better bet in my opinion, because it's very, not well known. It's also crypto. So there's a lot of crypto money that's floating around, finding out trying to figure out what to do. And it doesn't matter if it's real or not, because crypto, lots of scams make a lot of money. I don't know.
And the big pharma companies are like, emerging smaller.
That's
biotechs.
my bet, though.
But like my instinct is we're about to cure a lot of diseases, and so
Can you give me a subsect of biotech that I should focus on?
yeah.
And this is where I think he's wrong. Like, I think biotech, because we're going to cure a lot of diseases, they're going to crash. Once AI starts getting applied to health and starts getting applied to figuring out how to be healthy, it's not that you're going to have a bunch of diseases that need to be cured. You're going to get a prevention to the diseases. That's where it's like, you're not going to get, oh, here's a million cures for cancer. You're going to get that, but you're going to get, here's a million ways to avoid getting cancer. And here's how to catch cancer before it's even an issue. So you don't even need chemotherapy. You don't even need all this stuff. So prevention is way cheaper than healing, right? So like catastrophic care, whether it's cancer or whether it's a broken arm, is way, 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 way more expensive than, oh, you look like you might be getting cancer, let's stop it right now. Or, oh, you look like you're in a situation where you're going to break your arm, let's stop you from breaking your arm. Those are both way cheaper for, people on both sides of the equation. So I think it literally is going to destroy biotech. It's going to destroy all these medical industries. It would make sense that it would actually make them really successful. But actually it doesn't. Just like software, like the destructive nature of this is to big tech companies, and we're seeing it with all these tech companies like Adobe and all these crashing because, the value of them is actually way less, because the better this gets, the less you need software companies. The less you need 1,000 employees. We saw Block selling a bunch of people. And so it's like, it's the same thing, but even exponentially more, in my opinion, should apply to biotech and every other company, because instead of making companies better, it makes it, these companies are needed less and less. And like software itself is very fast to iterate before AI. Biotech, that sort of stuff, that's like super slow. That's like super slow to be able to iterate and super slow to be able to do things. So if you start applying like really, really short time frames of research to research, really short feedback loops, if you start compressing exponentially, that's exponentially faster in terms of how exponentially fast it is than the change in software. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're gonna get crashes in all the markets. I don't think there's any market that's safe. I think every market is going to be made way more efficient in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and the things you would think, oh, this is going to be way more powerful. It just means that like, not you don't need the huge companies anymore. So why would those companies be huge? It's like, how many people did it take to, take care of a horse in a stable? And for if you were to think about like a taxi company versus somebody who was running a horse and buggy company, you have to feed the horses, you have to house the horses, you have to do all of this stuff. And then you just have one person who buys a car, and now they are an Uber driver. The horse and buggy companies are done, right? I think it's the same thing with all this, with every single. I can't think of any. I think it's really just every single person is going to become their own CEO, their own person, and that's going to be disastrous for a lot of people because a lot of people aren't built for that. But there's going to be a lot of people who didn't have the opportunity across the world. That's what actually is really cool, and it's actually pro-human. It's like the vision of like liberalism, where it's like, it doesn't matter your race or your color or your creed or your age or your gender. If you have imagination, if you have a positive outlook, you can make something cool. And if you have the capability to do it, you can do it. And I think we're really actually for the first time in history going to have that experience where it's like, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter, your gender. I think it really is actually going to be like that liberal ideal of like, you can actually just do stuff. You can actually just make cool things. And you're going to see who actually believes in that and who actually is like really actually attached to like identity politics. And it's going to be most people. Like, it doesn't matter if they're, right wing or left wing. It doesn't matter if they're old or young, male or female. It's like, at the end of the day, most people actually do like that stuff. And the problem is they can't hold that back. They can't hold that. They can't hold, the future is arriving. The future is here. So it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. This is what reality is, which is a very, this is an industrial revolution. Yeah. Yeah, this is literally just like the entire world is about to change, and it's changing.
Stuff that's more programmable and adaptive, from the mRNA vaccines. And
by the time people realize it, by the time the average person realizes it, it's too late to stop it.
To kind of the peptide-based therapies, right? Where again, if you have a small molecule drug, you're like, there's only so many degrees of freedom you have, and you kind of make one thing better, the other thing gets worse. Like peptides, it has this almost digital property where you can say, oh, I'm going to substitute in this amino acid here and this amino acid there, and so it allows for more continuous optimization. So I think those kinds of areas I would be optimistic about. Maybe also cell-based therapies, which is like a new
stem cell.
No. So things like like I don't know, like a CAR T therapy where you kind of genetically engineer your basically take some cells out of your body, genetically engineer them to to attack.
It's really good. Amazon eggs. I'm gonna put you guys on some game. You want some real game? Amazon eggs. They're better. They're like, I'm sure they'll get crappy in the future, but right now they're really good because they are like the yolks are very yellow. And they seem very healthy. It seems like actually genuinely really good eggs compared to the eggs you'll get in the grocery store if you don't buy organic.
After particular cancer and put them back in the body.
Do stem cell therapies work? I spent the whole of last week doing this. I was at a hospital for 3 hours a day getting nebulizer.
Vibe coding peptides. Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's going to get really good in that sense. Because I don't think, like with software and with software engineering, it's pretty accessible to everybody over a certain IQ. Like it always has been. And it is so, even with it being very accessible and very cheap to do, you don't need to be very smart or very rich to be able to do some programming. Even with like the barrier to entry being so low, with the advent of AI and with the advent of Claude Code and Codex and Gemini and all that stuff in the command line with agentic programming, it's an explosion. It's like a Cambrian explosion, whatever that means. I don't know, like Cambridge or something. But it's an explosion of creativity, an explosion of a lot of it sucks, but that's like any explosion of creativity. But there is some really, really cool stuff being made. All right. I think the barrier to entry with like genetics, the barrier to entry with like biology, and the barrier to entry to chemistry, and the barrier to entry to math and engineering is so much higher. It's so much higher. So the fact that that barrier of entry is going to be gone, I think because the barriers to entry is so high, there's not as much experimentation that really happened. I don't think. I think there's going to be just like an explosion that's like 10 times the explosion of like software in terms of potential for health stuff, in terms of potential of peptides, in terms of potential for, because it was so much money involved and so much work to even get to that level of even understanding what you're doing, to where, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of nonsense, a bunch of stupid stuff, but there is going to be like crazy amount of cool advancements that I can't even imagine right now.
Themselves into my veins.
Like imagine being like somebody who's going to school for microbiology or for trying to the idea of making medicine, and now AI is starting to get good enough where you can like learn really fast and also experiment really fast, because you have like I think we're so close to like stuff being so insane.
Yeah, I am not up on the latest of stem cell therapies. You have to ask a currently practicing biologist.
But peptides, I think, will blow up, right?
I mean, again, the design space.
R11 Black, thank you for the
When
follow.
I tried to use Claude Code for the first time, I did struggle to get it to work. It was, for somebody who's very stupid and has no coding or programming knowledge, it's not very, very easy. I think there's a learning curve. I heard someone say it well. It's like even prompt engineering is like playing a piano. You can't sit and start playing it. To my audience, I think it becomes increasingly relevant where to learn how to set context, how to prompt, how to use Claude Code better for somebody like me who comes with zero knowledge. Can you recommend how one does that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say, we're trying increasingly to kind of like make that learning curve easier. So like one of the things that caused us to release Claude Cowork, which is basically Claude Code for non-coders, is, oh man, like we were noticing a bunch of non-technical people who really wanted to use Claude Code and were struggling through the command line terminal to do that, which, it's like coders use the command line terminal all the time, but like non-coders, it just kind of like makes things unnecessarily complicated. So, Cowork was designed to be more of a, the kind of, it was powered by the Claude Code engine on back, but, the idea was to kind of make it, more like user-friendly and like easier to use. So, we're definitely trying to introduce interfaces that kind of make it easier. But I would also say, that there's there's like classes you can take that help you learn this thing. Now I think it's a very empirical science. You mostly learn by doing, but it's like Anthropic has its like part of the company that we call the Ministry of Education, and I think increasingly put out videos on how to run effective agents and how to prompt models. We've already done some of that, and I think we're gonna ramp it up because we do want everyone to be able to learn this.
Any fleeting thought? Last question. Like, you want to leave us with something that we should bear in mind? What does Dario know that Nikhil and all of Nikhil's people do not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I know that many things, particularly now that the implications of the technology are kind of out there. So I mean, it can all be. I think most aspects of my worldview can be derived from what's publicly visible now, from what we can see, kind of outside in the world. But the thing I would say, and it's an experience I've had over and over again over the last 10 years, is there's this temptation to believe, that can't happen. It would be too weird. It would be too big a change. Like, I'm sure people are on that. Like, it would be too crazy if that occurred. No one seems to think that'll happen. And, over and over again, just extrapolating the simple curve or trying to reason out what will happen, like, leads you to these counterintuitive conclusions that almost no one believes. And it's almost like you can predict the future for free just by just by saying, well, it stands to reason that you need some empirical knowledge. You need some intuition. You can't reason from pure logic. I think that's another type of mistake that I see people make. But the right combination of a few empirical observations with just thinking from first principles can allow you to predict the future in ways that are publicly available and anyone should be able to do, but that happens surprisingly rarely.
Thank you, Dario, for doing this, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Good interview.
Is it okay?
Yeah, seemed great.
That was a good interview. I like that. That was good.